Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1798 of our daily content grind. Now, this is not the video I planned to make today, and I don't have any visuals prepared for it, so I'm sorry if this is just going to be more along the podcast nature of one of my videos, and you can just get to listen along. But frankly, I didn't have time to prepare. I literally just learned about this. So yeah, the big news of the day, as far as my geek circles are concerned, is that the Power Ranger reboot that Disney Plus has been working on is officially dead. Disney is not moving forward with it. So I have the article on Toku Nation pulled up here. So I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this just so we can clear all this. So it was being developed by Jonathan Steinberg and Dan Schatz, who did the Percy Jackson series, and it never made it past early stage of development. It basically boils down to, because Disney is reevaluating production costs, i.e., they're probably bleeding money between Star Wars and Marvel not doing as hot as it used to. They are sticking to the things they already own rather than working on something that is licensed from another company. And frankly, I can't really fault that. That is basically, the smarter business move. But it leaves us back in the exact stage of limbo that we keep ending up in with this franchise. So, okay, let's go over this. So the article is short, but it is actually really good at reminding you of all the hits that the Power Rangers have taken over the last few years. So last time we got really new Power Rangers media was in 2017 with the Power Rangers live action movie. The toy line that year was the biggest selling boys toy line, but you also had it so overproduced, you still saw it ending up flooding clearance sections. I remember walls and walls of that Morpher toy going unsold in particular. And no one liked the design of the Megazord, by the way. But the box office was also a bust too. That movie had good merits to it, but it also had a lot of flaws, and it failed to find an audience. Let's see. Meanwhile, we know the issues with Hasbro taking over the franchise as well. It was something that the previous CEO, Brian, Goldner, actually really believed in, wanted to do big things with the brand. But unfortunately, no one had any plan for it. He bought it when it was available and just handed it to the design team and go, make something. And no one was ready for it. No one really wanted to work on it. So it ended up floundering in Hasbro too until they passed it off to Playmates. And the Playmates toy line right now ain't doing so hot either. I see loaded pegs and shelves of those toys all the time. And even as they make new, as I read this and record this, I just came home with the new Tiger Zord toy. This is the franchise right now. But even with the whole new palette of toys, there's still the stuff that they've had for the last year still piled up on the normal shelves. There's only so much of it that is moving. And when even the Dragon Zord, when the most popular Zord ever, is going to crowdfunding because nobody wants to take it in, that's a problem. That tells you a lot. We'll also remember that Netflix was also toying with the idea of a brand new series on Power Rangers. They nixed that as well. There was the short series by Ninja Kids that was unfortunately in legal hot water because of agreements and licensing and et cetera. So that got shelved, but that was blocked because of the Disney series, which is now canceled. So maybe that can actually come out now. Basically, I want to say for the last 10 years, the only section of this franchise that has been going well has been the Boom Studio comics, which are still very, very good, though they have had several reboots at this point. It's very shaky right now. This franchise is incredibly shaky, but let's admit, right up front, this franchise has been on shaky ground for like 20 years. Like, once we got out of the Zordon era, and even like before we got out of the Zordon era, really, this franchise is on life support. So you have like Power Rangers Turbo, which nearly killed the whole thing. In Space was supposed to be last season, but In Space did gangbusters, so they needed to do more. And then it started trailing off again. Once we hit Wild Force, they decided, okay, the only way we can keep this viable is to move it all to New Zealand. They were going to cancel it. Then Disney was going to cancel it and just sell toys and run reruns. That's all their plan was. But when the production ended up being so cheap in New Zealand, they moved everything there. We get all the way to RPM, gets canceled there, moves ownerships again. We got the Neo Saban era, fails again. We move to the Hasbro era, fails again. It's really, really frustrating to be a Power Ranger fan over the last, let's be generous and go in the middle and say 15 years. Let's put it that way. It had its day. It's weird because like it's a huge part of my childhood. I know it's a huge part of a lot of childhoods because like everyone growing up had their season of Power Rangers, whether they watched it, religiously or not. It was your thing. It was there when you were a kid. And that is not enough, as it turns out. It really is just like a product of its time. Like tokusatsu here in the West has always kind of struggled. And that's unfortunate. You can see that like in the 90s when it was a cool new thing. Yes, but it was a fad. 5 years on, all of those series are either struggling to stay afloat or they are, just done. Like all the Sabans, all of the imitators, all of them went away. And for whatever reason, it's just never found an audience since. We've had Power Rangers, but no one tries to ape the format and formula anymore until recently when we got into Armor Sores. And that's a completely different story. And I feel like that's not so much aping the popularity of Power Rangers as it is trying to capture the magic they lost. Let's put it that way. It is unfortunate. Like, it's weird. It's weird that a franchise that was so successful just completely fails to find an audience now. Part of it you can blame on the fact that they relied too heavily on the Super Sentai footage. Those are all determined by what is popular in Japan right now. What is trendy? What is like in vogue? What are the kids playing with? What resonates with them? And even Sentai has struggled. The last 10 years have not been kind to Super Sentai either. Like, it's been also in a continuous downhill slope. It's to the point where I almost feel like it's not tokusatsu itself because other toku shows seem to be doing fine. Kamen Rider's still doing really well. Kamen Rider's doing well enough to push into the West. Ultraman's doing better than it's done in a long time. There's hope in tokusatsu, including in a Western sense. I'm starting to wonder if it is just the format of Power Rangers. I'll be honest, like the reason I stopped Super Sentai myself is just because those shows felt repetitive. You change up the theme, the look, the Zords, but overall, I'm going to get a very similar vibe to the stories, like everything's going to follow the same flow, right? An episode will introduce a problem. A monster will attack. The Rangers will not defeat the monster on the first attempt. We will handle the problem that we started in the second episode somewhere in the middle, or we'll start to approach the resolution. And then the resolution will usually come like in the middle of the second fight where they have this like push of spirit that helps them beat the monster. Monster will grow, pull out the Zords. The Zords will immediately combine, which makes no reason why we have individual Zords anymore. They will defeat the monster once again. We'll have this little epilogue at the end. Maybe we'll like connect to a longer story point at the end. And that's basically half of all Super Sentai and Power Ranger episodes that I just described. It's that flow. It's that formula. When every episode has like the same flow and vibe to it, you're only going to have so many people stick around. So I think it was a beast of its own formula that was successful, but you can't completely drop it or it's not familiar anymore. I don't know. I mean, this is just my take on it. This is just how I've been feeling about Power Rangers, about this franchise, no matter what side of the ocean it's from, for a long time now. So, where do you go from here? Where do you go from here? So, you have multiple toy lines that have failed to really stick around for a while. Bandai's last toy lines were not great. They seem to run out of ideas for what to do with Rangers themselves. The collector lines were not great because they still weren't giving collectors what they wanted. We asked for years for articulated Megazords, and they gave us the exact same Megazords, but with die-cast in them now. And that's not what we asked for. They give us, waves of Rangers, and we ask for more than Mighty Morphin. But when they do it really oddly. So Hasbro was not great about getting full teams out. Bandai previously was not great about getting full teams out because they would break up like in teams and like Build-A-Figures over multiple waves, which is not how that's supposed to work. That's not how that's supposed to work. And even then, it is hard to actually get a Power Ranger line to work at retail. So for instance, right now, the Power Ranger toy line's based on the original 1993. But what kid is watching the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 2026? You have like the 4K AI upscale on YouTube and Netflix, but I don't know how kids are feeling about that. I don't have kids coming into my toy shop asking for Power Ranger toys. They will ask, here's the thing. A lot of kids will still come into my toy shop asking for Transformers. Here's the major thing. Here's a major thing that a lot of people do not understand. So, when we talk Transformers here, we have the understanding that our franchise is still largely for kids, even though it seems to cater to collectors. They constantly rehash the same characters that have been around since 1984. They constantly come up with brand new ways of creating new versions of those characters as toys. They will go to obscure deep cuts that have not been in any cartoon, comic book, or movie in 30 plus years because they are the characters that collectors know. However, we still acknowledge that the collectors are only about maybe half of the revenue from Transformers. A lot of it still comes from kids who still, all they have to do, all a kid has to do is walk through the toy aisle, look at something and go, that looks neat. I want that, mommy. And they get the toy. That's all they have to do is just make sure they look cool for kids. So they will ask for them, even if they don't know who the character is. Kids a lot of times do not care. Like if there's a show they watch or like or something like that, obviously they're going to want characters from that show. But a lot of times it really is just, ooh, that looks neat, want that. And I get a lot of that in my vintage toy store. We keep a nice little selection of loose Transformers. And I get kids in all the time who want to pick through it and pick a Transformer, even though they're picking characters they clearly do not know anything about. They're just taking the green one. They're taking the one that turns into a scorpion. They're basically just buying things that they think look cool. And that's kind of how Transformers survives, even though, we're kind of hitting some of the same problems of movies and TV series failing. Where Power Ranger fails is that with Tokusatsu, it's very hard to get around the fact that all the characters look very similar. They have very similar aesthetic. All you're basically doing is changing the color of the suit and the visor on the helmet. And that's essentially the only changes you get. So to have entire toy lines devoted around to character designs like that gets really rough to kind of justify the entire existence, right? It's very difficult. And, where's your variety? Your variety is in monsters, which can't be repainted or retooled. So shops are, toy companies are reluctant to do them. Or in doing other Rangers besides Mighty Morphin. Then you get into, you might leave incomplete sets on the market. You might go into franchises that doesn't have the collectability you think it does. Because, like, frankly, we've tried. We have tried. We've tried expanding beyond Mighty Morphin, and I got news for you. It doesn't sell as well. It just doesn't. I know we want to believe that, like, In Space or RPM or Wild Force, Time Force, we've got some really, really good Power Ranger shows out there that absolutely have fans. But the nostalgia's in Mighty Morphin, and nostalgia sells, and that's why Transformers does not move beyond Optimus Prime, Megatron, Grimlock, Bumblebee, Soundwave, Starscream. It's why we are still stuck in those main characters, because that's what sells. And as much as you and I don't like to admit it, it's true of Power Rangers as well. Mighty Morphin is the safe bet. Mighty Morphin is always the one that people are asking for. The problem right now is that even Mighty Morphin isn't doing well. As stated, the Playmates toys saturate the market. I can find them everywhere around town, and frankly, I go to my local Walmarts and Targets often enough to notice they ain't moving. This is not a fresh shipment. I didn't see clean shelves once. These have just been sitting around waiting to hit a clearance aisle. And while I'm sure my area has something to do with it, it's Florida, not the most young and hip audience there is. There is something to still be said for it, because as I've said in the past, Transformers do still move in my area. Cyberworld surprisingly moves pretty well in my area. I see empty peg. I see half or mostly empty pegs of that all the time. I notice restocks of those. I don't for Power Rangers, not unless it's like a specialty end cap thing, which, that's where he came from. So it really does strike you, like, is the franchise just dead at this point? We can't get a movie off the ground. We can't get a new series off the ground. And even when we produce these new toys, they are flawed and not very popular. So is it time to just admit this franchise is dead? That maybe tokusatsu is just not going to work in the West. Maybe modern day kids and audiences are going to think it's cheesy, it's lame, and frankly, I don't think the presentation of Power Rangers in its last years is all that great. I hate the cartoony sound effects. I hate the removal of the spark effects. Like, you're losing the grit that made it cool and made it feel like this is an actual hero in battle, not a living cartoon character. I keep saying, and I still think this is true, your better bet is still to do something animated. If you do a cartoon based on Mighty Morphin where you can vary the body types and vary the designs so everyone looks unique, helps the toy line look a lot better. You can add new Rangers that weren't in the original set. It's all animation, so you don't have to rely on having the original voice cast. You can just bring back every character and recast as voice actors. You still probably bring Johnny Young Bosch in because he's still doing it. So animation means, it's more affordable than paying for all the monster costumes, paying for all the Megazord costumes, and hey, we can just rerun Dinozords as the toy line and then just add new Dinozords and expand that toy line to new levels. We have the capacity to do huge things with the franchise. The problem is it's not connecting anymore. And that's the issue you have to get through. You have to figure out how to make this franchise actually connect to modern kids while still tapping the collector market. And Hasbro, as we've stated, has kind of figured out how to do that. Much as we can criticize the Transformer line, it is hard to deny. It still moves on. It still chugs forward. It still does sell enough to justify continuing the way it's doing it. So clearly, something is working in that strategy. And if they apply it to Power Rangers, they might have a shot. But you need good media behind it, and you need to modernize it. You can't just keep going on the same designs that you have had since the early 90s. It needs to grow, it needs to evolve, and that's the issue here. So, I don't know. It's a frustrating day to be a Power Ranger fan. It really is. I was kind of banking. I was still telling people about the Disney Plus reboot, going like, yeah, well, they're working on something new. I'm excited to see it. They could really switch up the format. They could really like reinvigorate these characters, reinvent the franchise. And we're still back in limbo. We're right back in limbo. Playmates has a license to do the toys, but frankly, this is now all on Hasbro. And if we've learned anything from Cyberworld, it's that Hasbro really doesn't want to invest a whole lot in story, animation, or anything like this. And I think frankly, if they didn't want Power Rangers when it was originally bought, I don't think they want it anymore now, when it's completely failed at every reboot attempt and every attempt to push it back into the market. I don't know. I'm almost at the point where I'm like, maybe it's better to just shelve this for 5 or so years. Let it be a nostalgia series, just something that we just make. We license out collectible toys specifically for like adult collectors, just to keep it in the zeitgeist, but we can't actually use it for anything until like we really figure out what we want to do with it, and it's had time to gain demand again. I don't know, man. I don't know. This one was rough to find out about. So here, these are my just general thoughts. These just like the random things coming out of my brain about this. I'm sure I could go on all day, but we'll probably just cap it here. And I will let you in the comment section below do all the rest of the chatting for me. And make it whatever you want. Is this a problem with the genre itself? Is this a problem with the lack of development for the series? Is it a toy line problem? There's not one single answer, but feel free to discuss what you think of the state of Power Rangers. Should it go away? Should it be saved? How do you save it? That's up for you to discuss below. But for me, that's all I'm going to say for now. But thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.